Welcome to Strat News Global and another edition of The Gist. I'm Surya Gangadharan, and we're doing a short analysis of China's trillion-dollar trade surplus. My guest is Ajay Srivastava, formerly of the India Trade Service. He's currently running the think tank Global Trade Research Institute in Delhi. Ajay, glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you, Surya.
Ajay, the China's trade surplus is of long standing. When you look at it, they've had a great run on all these years. Why all the hoo-ha now?
Okay, when they released the yearly data for 2024, 2 days back, which is 13th of Jan, then they counted the data from January to December and they found out that surplus is almost $1 trillion. And this has happened for the first time. So their exports are $3.6 trillion, imports almost $2.6 trillion, surplus precisely $992 billion. But this is only merchandise trade. Services data is yet to come, and surplus will be much, much more than $1 trillion. And this has happened for the first time. And why so much news? I can think of only one reason, because whole of the world, led by Mr. Trump, was after China, that their imports into US should come down, their exports should come down. So many restrictions are there, and that's why people are watching how, despite all these restrictions, China is still growing.
Mhm. So, could China have suppressed this data? I mean, given the fact that Trump's inauguration is only days away, could they have suppressed this data?
Oh, that's not a possibility because trade data. I can access China's data through mirror data, which means China's exports to all major countries. I don't
Mhm.
need to look at China's data alone. I will look at the import from China into those countries and total up. It should broadly match. So suppressing a country's trade data will not help. The country will get caught soon.
Does this place pressure on Trump to go move quickly on his agenda to kind of bring down the deficit and and so on?
So, Surya, in fact, to understand this issue, first we have to understand, or Mr. Trump has to understand, what was the impact of his earlier measures. So, we did a very detailed study. So, first trade war, we can say, started in March 2018 when Mr. Trump imposed tariffs on aluminum and steel.
Yeah.
And so we compared the data 1 year back, that is 2017, and 2023, that is the latest yearly data available to us. And results were absolutely surprising to me and to everybody who has seen this. So Trump wanted imports into US from China to come down. They have indeed come down. Between 2017 and 23, imports from China into US came down by $82 billion, from $510 billion to $430 billion. So US should be happy. But US imports during these 5 years, they increased by almost 10 times, which means uh, China's imports from China into US came down by $80 billion, but US global imports increased by $760 billion, almost 10 times of what has come down. So imports from China coming down, but imports globally are going up. So how to resolve this? Why it has happened when the tariffs were largely targeted against China? So it's very interesting. So before talking about that, let's see who were the major gainer countries whose exports increased to US during these 5 years period. So the uh, this Mexico was the largest gainer, followed by Canada. These two neighbors, which do free trade, and then followed by ASEAN countries, basically Vietnam, and then
Mhm.
Korea, Germany. Number six is India. Also, people say India has not gained China plus one. India is number sixth largest gainer of China plus one policies. So now these countries have gained. What is behind all these things? We need to understand. It's very interesting. So Mexico was the largest gainer. We see US imports From Mexico, they increased between 2017 and 23 by $164 billion. But we see during this period, China's exports to Mexico also increased by $81 billion. So what is
Mm,
happening? What is happening is China is doing two things very cleverly. One is they are making penultimate products, almost ready products. For example,
mm,
solar cells they are making, they are supplying to say Mexico or Vietnam, and those people are making it into solar panel, doing some mechanical job, 10% value addition, and supplying to US and
mhm.
tariff free. Why? Because Mexico and US has that FTA. Because
NAFTA, yeah. Mm,
Vietnam and US has FTA. So while
yeah.
US wants to prevent imports from China, Chinese exports are going to US via third countries,
Mm,
Mexico, Vietnam, and other countries to in a large way, much more than, I mean, 10 times the imports from China has cut down. So we see, so one, US feels tariff is helping them, but what happened is 60% of the increase in US trade in the past 5 years was tariff free. It came from this USMCA and ASEAN countries. They were all tariff
mhm.
free.
Yeah.
So US has to resolve this whether tariffs are good means. China is China is jumping tariffs through one, as I have just described, one is by supplying penultimate products which are to be processed, 5-10% value addition in the country of exports to be exported to US. And second, China is establishing factories in Mexico, in many of the ASEAN countries. So if they're setting up factories, investment is there, then then it becomes that country's product. It's not even Chinese product, even though it's
Yeah.
done by Chinese companies. So these two means China has totally beaten US in their own game. And if Mr. Trump, as I we are all listening, again talking about tariffs, so he has to understand all these things. They don't work. Some better strategy
Mhm.
is needed to contain China.
So all this talk of diversifying supply chains, that's not working, isn't it?
Not working at all. And Surya, we have to understand, it's the US and other Western power led by US who made China. And it took 20-30 years. I say from 1990 to 2010, they
Yeah.
handheld China. For example, I read somewhere that more than 5 to 10,000 Apple engineers, they were in China. They were hand holding, teaching the Chinese technicians how to make things from nothing. So China is now a resounding success, and it has been built over 3 decades. You cannot unravel it by just
Mhm.
talking about tariffs and all these things in 1, 2, 3 years. It will take time, if at all.
This, this hand holding of China, over so many decades, when it was becoming increasingly clear that it was at the cost of American industry and innovation. I mean, how does that explain policy making and the thinking of politicians there, their industry?
Oh, Surya, it's very interesting. I loved when I understood this. In 70s, uh, one Mr. Friedman was there, a great economist. He
Yeah.
later got a Nobel Prize also for economic theories. He proposed an ideology that profit should be the sole motive for corporates. If they are
Hmm.
meeting legal requirements, paying taxes, then they should not worry about jobs and pollution, all those things. That's the job of the government. And this was like a dream word for corporates. They lapped onto it. And then it was propagated at high level, spending billions of dollars. In the universities, leading universities, PhDs were done along these lines, thousands of PhDs were
Hmm.
done. And finally, in 5-10 years' time, US got reconciled that this is the right move for the US. And they decided that all the manufacturing, even manufacturing is dirty only, why dirty our backyard? So shift everything to China or countries like China, mostly China. So they
Hmm.
shifted everything in China. China opened its arm. They were Deng Xiaoping was there, and they were
Yeah.
very smart in receiving them. And but China didn't have the technical expertise. So US provided all the technical expertise, and the US was followed by Japan and European leading nations there. They handheld China and made China what it is. Only thing is that, and then US helped China's entry into the WTO when countries like India were complaining at the WTO that China is selling some Indian brands fake, say drugs are they are selling Indian drugs, they are selling fake drugs US was not helping India. They were thinking that this does not concern us. China into
Yeah.
low end manufacturing, and they will never compete with us. But they were surprised, and I think from 2010 onwards they got alarmed, and now they are doing all these things.
Mhm. So, what is the way out of this? It's a trap, isn't it? How does one get out of this?
So you created a genie.
Yeah.
You release the genie out of the bottle. You want to put it back at your will. Now genie has become stronger, and they have to think about fundamental things. Suppose by tariffs, how you can start manufacturing. US does not make even the cough syrup. It will
Yeah.
take time, and most of the things we talk about robotics or AI, but you need laborers. If your labor cost per hourly charges are highest in the world, how you are going
Mhm.
to make those things in cost
Yeah.
effective way? All these things are there. So I'm listening a new thing that if somebody India, even India or US, you want to do something in clean energy, say solar energy, then you should be willing to pay higher 30-40% higher prices for steel, for solar cells, all those things. We cannot compete with China on
Mhm.
equal terms. So those type of new thinkings are coming. Nobody has an idea. People, we may talk confidently, but nobody has an idea. But tariff certainly did not help last time. Let's see what happens this time.
Mhm. So, what is the way forward for countries like India? We are, I mean, we may have gained a little bit from diversifying supply chains, but when you look at our own trade figures vis-a-vis China, we are really in bad shape.
So Surya, I don't agree here. You know,
Mhm.
uh, large economies like China or USA or India, trade is an outgrowth of economy. So
Mhm.
I say, the despite the largest being the largest exporter, the trade accounts for 20% of China's GDP. India is almost the same. US is 11-12% only. It's the smaller countries where trade leads the economy, say Vietnam 90%,
Mhm.
Singapore maybe 200%, something like that. So larger economy trades an outgrowth. We cannot compromise our policy to kill the domestic industry. US will not do that. Japan will not do that. China will
Yeah.
never do that. India should not do. India has not done. India will not do also. So ultimately, the test for us to improve our innate competitiveness. Our
Mhm.
land is expensive. Our power is not uninterrupted. Our costs are high. Our lending charges are high. All these things make product costs high. I'm not talking about technology. So we have to work on these fundamental reforms
Mhm.
to do what we want to do. We have to do a lot of fundamental things, and these things are not sexy sounding. So nobody talks about these. We talk about PLI. So what PLI does is, if so, I was doing a study and we found that if I want to make solar cells in India, it will be at least 40% more expensive than if I made in China.
Mhm.
So what PLI will do, I'll import solar cells from China and do some mechanical thing and make into solar panel and claim PLI. Same is happening for smartphones also. About
Mhm.
70 to 80 to 90% import content is there. Of course, we'll take time to develop our own indigenous ecosystem that's developing also. But if your cost of production is high, I cannot produce from the beginning. I cannot
Yeah.
make solar cell from the raw material stage. I have
Mhm.
to import something penultimate, like we were just talking some time back. So we have to focus on these basic issues first. Our
Mhm.
battle is long.
Yeah. And I was just reading the paper the other day about India back to allowing Chinese executives for who will man key positions in Chinese firms here. So, in a sense, we seem to be going back to acknowledging the reality of the trade, of how trade flows happen.
See, if it's a Chinese firm, I don't think we can say no to a Chinese personal heading that firm. But
Yeah.
if and there should be a policy. So I don't see China, India-China economic relationship the way our political relationship is. Though I'm more conservative, leaning towards
Yeah.
that side. But we have to have a policy. I don't want that last year we were talking something totally different, and this year we talk something very different. We should have a
Mhm.
clean policy. We want this much from China economically, politically, and we should work on that. I don't want that every quarter I'm getting surprised through experts or policy
Yeah.
announcements.
Mhm.
We should have a long-term vision.
So, are you saying that we should divorce the political relationship from the economic, insulate both in a
No,
sense?
no, I don't think we have had bad experience and long
Yeah,
spells
absolutely.
of bad experience.
Yeah,
Only thing is that, you know, it will take time to develop. Our We talk as if we want to develop in 2 years' time, 4 years' time. It takes time. China took 3 decades to reach where they are now,
yeah, absolutely.
and we will
Yeah.
also take time. And they underwent a lot of pain. We have to undergo pain. We just cannot import something and polish it and repackage it and say it's our own product. We have to say that our costs are high. Let's work on those costs, lowering those costs, and it can be done. Yeah. So Surya, I say, suppose we are lacking technology in some products, but there are 90% products which can be made here
In
if
here.
we make
Yeah.
efforts. Yes. So we have to focus on those non-attractive, non-sexy things to build country. But we have to build from scratch. We cannot rely on China or US or anybody. I'm not saying we should stop exports, imports. Of course, it should be free, but we should not lean too much on China. It's no good.
Mhm.
You see
And
what
there's
is
a
happening to US. What is happening to
yeah.
here? They're not making even cough syrup. We are far better than US, but we need to go more.
Mhm. So, last question. There's also a political economy to consider in India. Is that a huge drag on the policy making?
So Surya, I will say something like this, that uh, you take a decision. We are a big country, fifth largest economy, and all those things are there. We should take a decision, stick to that for 5 years at least. We should have at least 5 years, if not 10-year policy. If
Consistency.
we want to, yeah, if we want to, how much we want to factor political thing, how much to factor economic thing, let that be a decision at the government level, and all of us will happily follow that. But I don't
Mhm.
want a situation where we keep on talking different things every quarter.
Mhm.
So,
And do you see
but personally,
yeah,
yes, yes,
yeah, go
please.
ahead. Do you see some consistency now approaching?
I will wait for this budget and then we'll tell you.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. Good point. Ajay Srivastava, thanks very much for this short and very enlightening conversation. We will, of course, carry this forward in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Surya. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you.
That's all we have for you on this conversation. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media. Thank you very much. Good day.